Okay. This is Billy.
Hi, I'm Billy Avent.
And he's a guitar tech. And so this is going to be another, we had a good response to our interview with the blues harp player, and this is going to be along that line. Billy is a guitar tech or a luthier. Mm-hmm. So with my guitars, I bring them here, and if there's issues, he fixes them and he sets them up and things like that. So anyway, what I thought we'd do, well, first, how did you become a luthier?
Well, I was going to college at Texas Tech. I was playing in a band and I needed my guitar set up. There was 3 guys basically that at least that I knew of in town that did that. The first guy was a major jerk, so I didn't even go there. I mean, he was that bad of a jerk. The second guy was also kind of a jerk, but I said, okay, I'm going to get my guitar worked on here. And when I got back, I was playing a Les Paul at the time, and the string was sitting outside of the saddle when I went to pick it up. And I said, hey, the string is outside of the saddle. And he said, well, all you got to do is put it back. I said, that's not the point. Needless to say, it was not set up that well. I went to the third guy. Long story short, with him also no good and kind of a jerk too. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to try to do this myself. And so I got online, tried my best to do a good job doing a setup, and most of it was pretty good. The intonation could have been better because I didn't have a stroke tuner at the time, but my bass player noticed that my guitar was sounding a lot better, so he wanted me to work on his bass. And after I worked on his bass, a friend of his that also plays bass thought, hey man, can you do my bass too? I thought, hey, maybe this is something that I want to do, because at the time I was in accounting. I knew that was not something I wanted to do, and was trying to think of what I was going to do. So around that time, I had gotten something in the mail from Guitar Craft Academy, part of Musicians Institute, and decided, hey, this could be really cool, learn how to build some guitars, learn how to work on guitars. So that's what I did. I went out to California for about a year, learned under John Carruthers and some of the other really smart guys out there.
It took you a year?
Almost. I think it was about 10 months, something like that, to go to this school out there. 10 months isn't that bad.
Did you use your school money to do it? Your tech money?
No, I didn't. I had money saved up, about that much money, and it was actually pretty affordable. Living out there actually cost more than going to school out there.
So you become a luthier and you come back to Texas, mm-hmm. and then what happened?
So I was in Euless for a little bit. My idea there was that I was going to get business both from Dallas and from Fort Worth. That didn't happen. There's enough good people in Dallas and enough good people in Fort Worth to where people don't feel like driving to the mid-cities area, understandably so, to get work done. So I decided, do I want to move to Fort Worth, where there is a pretty good music scene? Do I want to move to Dallas? I was more comfortable with Dallas because I grew up in Dallas, and so I decided to move to this area. I moved to Farmers Branch and was here for a while, and I ended up getting into amplifiers later at the request of some of my customers who said, hey, I wish you did amplifiers as well.
So how long have you been doing this?
Officially, I've been doing it, I think, 8 years, something like that. Amplifiers, probably 5 or 6 years.
What's the coolest guitar you ever worked on?
Oh, that's hard to say. I mean, and I guess it depends on what's cool about it. Some of them are just really unique. I like working on some of the really unique guitars. You'll get some off-the-wall stuff. There was one that was covered in snake skin, actual python skin. It had tons of scales on it, so it felt kind of funny working on it. That was a custom, obviously. There's also been like a 1960 Strat that was really cool. But
you ever work on a 59 Les Paul?
No, I haven't. I actually haven't.
The 60 Strat's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You ever do any Strats in the 50s?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, they are cool, but you know, while historically speaking, they're very, very good guitars. And I love a Strat. It's probably one of my favorite guitars, if not my favorite guitar. But it's still a Strat. You're looking at it thinking, this is so cool because it's a design that's been unchanged.
Right.
But, you know, it is still just a Strat.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking at all this stuff. You got, you got just cool stuff. Now, like, I'm going to ask you some questions. Like when people talk about the radius of the neck, what is the radius of the neck?
That's basically just talking about the curvature from one side to the other. When you're looking at it this way, there's a curve across here. A classical guitar would typically be straight across, whereas most other guitars and basses are going to be curved to some degree. So you'll hear something like a 12-inch radius, and that basically just means that they're using 12 inches to draw a circle. And that circle, if you were to take that little curve across one part of it, that's essentially what you have here. So the lower the number, like a vintage Strat or a vintage Tele with a 7 1/4 radius, that's going to be very curved in comparison to the more flat.
Necks in the old days were more curved?
Right, and the idea is that the more curved it is, the easier it's going to be to play chords, because your hand, it wants to wrap around naturally in sort of a cup shape, and if you're trying to chord something that's straight across, it can be very uncomfortable, especially on bar chords where you're having to lay your finger across there. You'll oftentimes notice that on your index especially, the middle part is very difficult to push the pressure down. So those curved radiuses, the more curved ones with the lower numbers, again, are going to be easier for chording. The problem is that when you go to bend the strings and do really big bends, as got popular with a lot of the blues and rock and roll music, as you start to bend that across, the other side where the bridge is fixed, and then you're moving it across, and it's essentially having to make it over a hill, and that causes fretting out. So tendency to go towards more of a flat radius over the years start to happen. Like now, 12-inch radius is probably one of the most popular, 12 and 14 and 9.5.
What happens, like, you have a string and there's no buzz, but then you get to just 1 or 2 or 3 frets and there's buzz, and there's no buzz here and no buzz. What's going on with the buzz here?
There could be a couple issues there. If I were to get buzz on, let's say, this fret of this string, first thing I would do is think, well, does this note have an exact other note on another string? For example, as you know, you can hit this string here on the 5th fret, and it's the same as the open string here. Well, if you hit the 5th fret here, and then you hit the same note on this string, and you don't have buzz, then it's caused by frets or something like that. If you do have
so
buzz,
it doesn't have anything to do with the truss rod?
It could. It certainly could.
But how can that rod affect just 1 or 2 frets?
It usually doesn't.
So it's usually a fret?
Right. Now,
Okay.
sometimes you'll have a neck that's perfectly straight, which if the frets are perfect, you can usually get away with that. And you usually probably won't have any fret buzz. What normally happens is frets are not usually perfectly level. They're slightly unlevel, and if they were perfect when you got it, then they certainly aren't going to be perfect a few months
Well, I
later.
would imagine frets wear down at different speeds.
Absolutely.
Because if you're doing a lot more bends down here over time, this is going to get more worn down than these frets here.
Absolutely, yeah. The 12th and 15th frets on the high E string of a guitar and the B string, those get worn down a lot faster than, let's say, the 13th fret usually.
Now, when you set up, you have a measurement thing where you can go to the 12th fret, and the specs say that it needs to be so far off the neck, right?
Right.
Different guitars have different settings, right?
Yeah, they can. Usually on a guitar, so in any setup, the first thing you're usually going to want to mess with is the truss rod. Because if you adjust the truss rod, every single other thing will be affected by that.
Now, how does a truss rod work? It's in the neck. Now, what is turning it? What does it do to make the neck straight? Physically, what does it do?
Well, there's a couple different types. There's a vintage type that's the one way. It only works one way. And the way that works is, let's say you didn't have a truss rod and you were just looking at string tension versus the wood in the neck. Well, the strings are wanting to pull it this way, and sometimes it's too much. And so what they would do is they put this truss rod that could bend it back
But
this
how does
way.
it bend it? By turning it?
So on a vintage style, there's a channel that is not straight; it's actually curved, and then you've got this piece of metal that's attached. And when you pull like that, it wants to straighten out. Well, in straightening itself out, it is forcing that curved channel to also become straight, which it causes the neck to curve.
Huh.
Now, the newer styles are different. The double action truss rod actually works in a completely different way, and they're actually straight, and they sit in a completely straight channel, and it operates much differently than that.
That's what new guitars have?
Most of them do, and some of them are going for a vintage spec or vintage thing, and some people believe that it's a better sound. There's usually less metal in the vintage style, so some people believe that having more wood versus metal in the neck is going to improve the tone. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that idea, but
What about sometimes like on tellies, you have, the saddles will be brass. Does that really make a difference?
I believe so, yeah.
How does it make a difference?
Well, there's a lot of mass there, and this is true for a lot of guitar bridges. If you don't have any mass there and it's really light, you're usually not going to have very good sound. The brass saddles, the biggest problem with those vintage style brass saddles is that most of them are straight across, at least historically speaking. They're straight across, and therefore the intonation becomes a problem, because if you've ever looked at the way that these stagger on a normal guitar, there's usually a stagger on these first three strings. And again, we're looking at a 4-string bass, but imagine we're looking at a guitar here. These first three strings are going to be staggered, and then you'll see another stagger from the low E to the D string, and you can't get that same stagger with them straight across. You end up having to have a compromise on each pair of strings. So for example, the E and the A, usually that low E will end up being a little bit sharp, and that A will be a little bit flat.
With the telly, they don't, I think it's only 3 saddles for 6
Right.
strings.
Right, exactly.
And that's got to be weird, right?
It is, but
Setting it 2
It-
strings per saddle.
it is. Now they do have some different stuff.
Yeah, aftermarket stuff.
Exactly, and that stuff's great. That's a great improvement if you have that style bridge. To get the Joe Barton saddles, other people make those saddles as well. They're called compensated saddles, and what it is they're, instead of being straight across, they're purposely cockeyed. And what's nice about that is that the low E is purposely set farther back than, let's say, the A string. And so even though you might not be able to get them absolutely perfect, there's still going to be some compromise there. It's going to be so close that it's going to be virtually unnoticeable.
So the big controversy, right? And I've seen a lot of talk, right? Somebody says, will say that tone, not acoustic tone, electric tone is the effect of the string and the pickup. And then you get these guys that'll just say, I have such and such wood, and it's got this tone. And there's all kinds of tests they do about tone and wood. Does the type of wood that this body is does that affect tone when it's electric?
Right.
And the answer is
Okay, so I think a lot of these guys that do these demonstrations are really smart. Let me just first off say that. And they really know their physics. But you're talking about something that's very complex, and the proof's in the pudding. And if it were possible to make a completely plastic guitar, say for maybe a Dan Armstrong, lucite guitar or something like that, which is prohibitively expensive. The plastic resin that they use for that body is expensive. They would be making plastic guitars if they could. Because you go to buy an inexpensive guitar and it's still made of wood. It might be cheap wood, but it's made of wood.
Right.
If they thought that they could make it out of something even cheaper, like plastic, I think that it already would be plastic.
Right.
But they know that they're going to cross the lines where it sounds so awful they
So
just
you're a
didn't
wood
sell.
guy.
I am, and I do believe it makes a big difference
in
in
an
the
electric
tone.
scenario. The pickup in an electric scenario is it the tone is not caused by the pickup and the amp settings and
It
the
is.
tone.
It is.
No, but well, okay, you're a wood guy then. How much of a difference is there? If you got 100%, right? How much difference does tone make based on the type of wood you use?
Oh man.
Because these guys get so anal about the type of wood. To me, the wood is furniture. It's what it is. You use a piece of wood to put this stuff down.
Right.
And you do whatever you do to the wood. Now these guys come in and say, you know, it's a this, you know, it's a maple top with whatever.
Right.
It's this with the and oh, if you use a rosewood fretboard, oh, it's a little sweeter than maple.
Yeah.
Now, some of this, I think these guys have no lives, and they've convinced themselves in their mind that when they play the rosewood neck, they're getting a tinnier whatever sound, and when they use a maple, it's whatever. Now, if they say they get a different sound because of the size of the frets, that makes sense to me. But if you're purely talking about the wood, you tell me this: if this was a $200 guitar, so the wood is whatever, versus a $2,000 guitar and the wood is whatever,
Right.
and the pickups are the same, the strings are the same, the saddle, everything's the same, amp settings exactly the same.
Sure.
How much difference in the tone?
It depends on how different those two pieces of wood are.
Okay,
and
let's
their
just say
resonant
piece of
frequency.
crap, whatever kind of wood, you got 100%. What percent difference is the tonality?
I don't know if I could put a percentage on it. If
Well,
I was
would you
going to
say half?
spitball it, if I was going to, no, I wouldn't even say half. But I would-
25%?
35%.
See, I can't tell the difference.
I'll tell
Some
you,
of the
I'll tell you
sweetest
why
tone
I'm
guitars
convinced.
I've ever played is just a cheap piece of crap.
Okay, but that's not to say that the wood didn't make a difference, though. I'll tell you a story real quick. Is I had an EJ guitar, the Eric Johnson guitar. The guy brought me, and I did a setup on it. It did not sound good. I didn't want to say anything. I just did not think this guitar sounded very good. And he calls me later that week and he says, "Billy, you know, it plays great, but it just doesn't, you know, it doesn't sound good." I told him, I said, "Man, I know," and this was the first time I'd worked on an Eric Johnson guitar. And I said, "Man, you know, I
His
just don't know."
Fender Strat model?
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
the signature Eric Johnson model. And so he had me upgrade a ton of stuff on it. We upgraded the pickups, we upgraded a lot of the electronics, and I told him, I said, that just the pots and stuff aren't going to greatly affect the tone. But we replaced all kinds of stuff. We replaced the nut. He wanted to replace the tuners anyways. I know that's not really going to affect the tone. But we replaced just about everything on this guitar, and it still didn't sound right. And I told him, I said, "Man, I'm at a loss here because I know that the wood is quality. And theoretically, you know, most luthiers will agree that a quarter sawn maple neck is superior to your traditional flat sawn, meaning that the grain is going up and down. Now, structurally speaking, that is true. It will warp less over time, structurally speaking. But I was reading through a forum, just clutching straws, trying to figure out, why does this thing not sound good? Everybody was suggesting for pages and pages, same thing we had already tried. And I'm thinking, you know, this is all the stuff we've tried. What could it possibly be? I was pulling my hair out trying to figure this out. Well, one guy later on in the post, he just made a really quick post. He said, "I changed everything on the guitar, and I ended up changing out the quarter sawn maple neck to a flat sawn maple, and now it sounds great." I told the guy this. I said, "You have an extra neck."
So now wait, you're gonna this signature guitar is not cheap.
No, it's not.
And you're saying that you did all this stuff and you changed out the neck,
Yes.
and that was the difference.
Big. I'm talking night and day difference. And later that year, I was at the guitar show at the convention center. I went to use the restroom, and
We don't need to talk about that.
I'm passing by a booth where this guy is selling a bunch of Eric Johnson necks, four Eric Johnson necks, just the neck. And I'm looking at him, kind of smiling. You know, he says, hey, I'll make you a deal on this Eric Johnson neck. I said, nah, I'm fine, you know. I said, I got to get back to my booth anyways. He says, no, I'll make you a really good deal. I said, man, I told him, I said, I don't really like the Eric Johnson necks. You know, I didn't have really time to get into the reason why. And he said, well, man, this is, you don't know what you're talking about. This is way better than flat saw maple. I said, well, then where's the rest of the guitar? Why do you have 4 necks and no guitars? He had nothing to say to that. But, I do believe that the wood can make a big difference. Although I will say that the fretboard I don't think is nearly as big of a deal as some people make it out to be. I think that the body wood and the neck wood can make a big difference.
Eric Johnson's one of those guys. If you have a maple neck, he wants the grain of the wood to be as straight as possible.
Right. I know.
Okay. I think everybody's just got too much time on their hands.
I know. I'll agree.
But you
with
agree
you
that it's extremely important to keep the strings as straight as possible. And so when you have a headstock where the strings go like that, that's not necessarily a good
right.
thing.
There's a lot of the Dean guitars that
Right.
sound really good.
Right.
And the Floyd Rose guitars, Deans, I could see owning one of those.
Well, it's straight to the lock.
Right, exactly, because you have the lock, so it
Right.
takes that out of the equation. But all the ones that I worked on that were fixed bridge, they would sound great for about 30 seconds until it goes out of tune.
Right.
And you just can't keep them in tune because as it passes over the nut and then flares out like that, there's so much friction inherent in that design. You're going to have...
Let me ask you, this is kind of like a real quick session. You have to answer quickly.
Okay, I'm going to try.
Best strings for the money.
Denario.
Denario.
Or Ernie Ball, those are both good.
Okay. Best electric guitar pickups globally.
Bill Lawrence, L45S.
Best bass guitar pickups globally.
I like the regular P-bass pickups, a lot of the Fender ones, yeah.
Really?
I like a lot of those.
Your preference, single or double coil humbuckers? Or P90s?
Humbucker probably.
That's it.
Or some of the stacked humbuckers. A lot of people don't like those as much. I like the twin blade style humbuckers. You get a lot of the focus that you get with a single coil, but you still get the hum free and a little bit extra output.
When you were in your band playing out, did you play with effects or not?
I did.
A lot or a little?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay.
I probably had 3 pedals.
And what kind of a amp did you play through?
At the time, I was playing with a B52 AT100, which is kind of a knockoff of a Frankenstein or something like that. It was a budget beast. I don't know if I'd pick the same amp today that I did.
What do you think of amps that have modeling now?
They're great for certain applications. For practice, it's great. Some of the ones that play backing tracks and that sort of thing. I mean, that's really awesome to have as a practice tool. You might even be able to do really, really small kind of gigs, but I wouldn't rely on it for any serious kind of tone.
Best amp for the money? Global brand?
Hot Rod, Deluxe, or DeVille?
Fender.
Probably DeVille, yeah.
Fender. Best tuners for bass?
Goda.
Best tuners for 6-string electric?
Either Godo or Schaller.
Okay.
Kind of a tie for me.
Best saddles? Bass?
For bass, I like all the badass bridge stuff, the Leo
Okay.
Kwan stuff.
And for guitar?
I really like the Joe Barden Telly saddles. Those are really nice.
Favorite guitarist?
George Harrison, just because I love the Beatles. I don't know if he's the best guitarist ever, but I'm going to go with George Harrison, I guess.
Okay, best guitarist who's not a Beatle?
Maybe Steve Vai.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, Heather, we're going to walk around, if you can get some shots, and we're just going to show people some of the stuff he has quickly, and then we'll wrap up. So, this is just stuff that you have in your shop that you're working on.
This one actually is mine. I
Oh,
had
this
it
is
over
your
here.
Strat?
Yes, it is, and I happen to be playing Rocksmith with this. It's my guilty pleasure. I don't don't know if you know about that. It's a video game that
Oh,
you
okay.
actually play instead of.
So, is this a Strat? Because I'm looking
So
at
this is actually a Strat body, and it's a deluxe, and the neck is actually a Warmoth, and it's got the bird's eye maple on it,
Oh, that's cool.
and it's a lefty, as you can see,
Alright.
left-handed.
Does it make a difference if this is 4-bolt or 3-bolt?
It doesn't make a huge difference. I think the reason a lot of people did not really like the 3-bolt is because that came along with another change. They were getting too lazy to redo the center line, so the necks did not fit the neck pocket on those 70s models.
Do you like those that it's just one continuous neck all the way through?
It's okay. The neck through. My problem with that is future serviceability of it. You know, with the bolt-on, you can replace it.
Yeah, you can't take it off.
Yeah,
That's a
so.
good point. When I first came in today, the first thing my eye went to is this is a Gibson, and we don't know what model it is.
I think it's called the RG, and I'm embarrassed that I don't even know the exact name of it. Let me see here.
What are you doing to it?
Oh, I'm doing a lot to this. The frets are really, really low, and they're really worn out. So we're going to replace the frets. We're also redoing it to where it no longer has actives, because right now it has EMG active electronics. We're going to get rid of all this. We're putting burst buffers in there with the traditional size pots, the 500Ks that belong to that, and some small stuff. Cleaning
So
it
what
up.
is this, probably 80s vintage if it's active?
Oh, I think it's actually even older than that. Somebody, I think, put these in here aftermarket.
Aftermarket.
Yeah, this has been butchered up.
Okay. Then you said this is somebody's Strat and they had it custom painted?
Yeah, so there's an old band called MC5.
Yeah.
And one of the players.
Pick out the jams.
Yeah, and this guitar is kind of tribute to that.
Oh, that's cool.
And he just painted that himself. He did a pretty good job for painting in his garage.
What about this one? That's a Taylor
That's
acoustic?
a Taylor, and I believe that's the Big Baby, and he's having me do fretwork.
Okay.
And I think we're getting a new saddle on there too.
And I've asked you about this. This is what you use in your shop. I mean, do you like this?
I like it. I wouldn't use it as my only amp. The thing is, it's a single-ended amp. It has a great saturated, overdriven tone, but you're not going to get the same kind of sound that you're going to get from big bottle tubes like you would 6L6, EL34. But it's a good amp.
This immediately caught my eye when I walked in.
It's a monster.
This is a.
It's a Super 6 reverb Fender.
I didn't even know there was such a thing. Okay.
And it's gigantic, and it's very loud, and
These are 12s?
I think so. Yeah, let me look real quick. It could be 10s. No, these are 10s.
These are 10s.
Yep.
So it's 6 10s.
And it's unbelievably loud. And the funny thing is, you know, usually when you have intermittent volume problems, the volume goes
Rick,
down.
Pick it up on your side. Let's see how heavy this is.
It's actually not too bad. It
Well,
could be
it's-
worse.
There is no back. It's open back.
Right.
Okay. All right.
It sounds great. It's a great sounding amp.
I didn't
Obviously.
even know they made this.
Oh yeah, I don't think they made it for that long. You don't see these very often.
How old is this?
I believe that's late 60s.
So this is vintage.
Mm-hmm.
So like in a normal week, how many guitars come in?
It's feast or famine around here. Sometimes I have 30 guitars that come in, and then sometimes it's 2 guitars, 3 guitars. So
And like of all the work that you do, how much is for guitars and how much is for amps?
and again, that comes in waves. It's the weirdest thing. Sometimes I'll have a ton of people come in that week with bass guitars. Sometimes it'll be a ton of amplifiers, and I'll have no guitars. Sometimes it's nothing but guitars and setups.
Okay. Well, anyway, this is Billy, and this is his website. And like it says, he works on, I noticed that he's got an effects pedal right here that he's working on. So he works on guitars, bass, effects, and amps. And it's Avant, and this is his website. So if you're in the DFW area and you need a luthier or guitar tech, this would be a good place to come.
And really, if anybody has any questions,
Yeah, if you have any questions, just post them below and I'll make sure he gets to answer them. All right? Thank you.